I wanted to share why I think the Gottman 1 to 5 ratio is so important to understand. Is because I've seen it in my life. The reason I think I have a kind of a lonely existence and, not a lot of close friends, like kind of some superficial ones, but I'm grateful for what I do have. But the main thing that I've noticed with things like, I guess, the kind of like acute loneliness that one has, like in those moments where you're just like, I have nobody I could tell about this because there's just nobody that would understand. It'd be too much of a burden if I gave this to someone. I think a lot of this comes from kind of having an inordinate amount of focus on those negative instances. And I think the Gottman 1 to 5 is a good example. So if you don't know what the Gottman 1 to 5 is, it says for every singular negative interaction, it takes 5 positive interactions of equal caliber in order to overcome that problem, the negative memory. So like, and they'd have to be equal in measure. So one example that's always brought up is like someone cuts you off in traffic and then gives you the finger. You'd have to have like about 5 of those interactions of equal caliber. So thinking about that, I'd say like somebody lets you in 5 different times in order to get over that one interaction. We just seem to be hardwired to certain things like that, like having negative experiences and then trying to understand what they mean, and trying to like avoid them. But we kind of place in unfair amount of importance to them. And I think that's probably for survival, is what I've heard talked about. But how I think this happens and leads to people being kind of lonely is like, if you're anything like me, you probably grew up with a bunch of people who maybe didn't have your best interests at mind. You didn't have like a strong support system. Maybe your parents didn't really know how to parent because nobody really teaches you how to parent, but you become kind of thrust into a family that doesn't really care too much, or maybe is openly hostile to you, or maybe they just feel that you need to toughen up and your norms aren't the same as theirs, and so like they're trying to mold you into what would be useful to them. So I have a whole slew of cousins that I don't talk to because I don't get along with them. I have a lot of family in my hometown that I don't see because it's not worth it. But that's because I'm kind of focusing on the singular negative interactions, and those positive interactions are easy to forget. But I think this is why things like gratitude practice is important, and prayer. Although I'm not advocating for like a type of Christian prayer, it could be any type of prayer, but like a ritual practice where you recite things and kind of keep in mind the stuff that you are grateful for. I think that's what helps you kind of focus more on those positive aspects. And if you're feeling those depths of loneliness, or you're going through a moment where things are very difficult, just know that if you can kind of calm yourself down using breathing techniques, the one that I've been using is like the 4 inhale, 6 exhale, or 8 exhale. Calm yourself down before you recite the prayer, you do it, and then work on finding what you're grateful for. That will kind of help alleviate any of this uncomfortable, acute loneliness that's hyper focused on you having to perform or you having to become something you don't want to be. But this is stuff that I'm kind of learning slowly, and I can kind of tell this will work if you just keep at it. If you do like a ritual practice, like those moments that kind of stick in your mind that make it so that you feel so like horribly lonely, like you have nobody, like there is somebody there. I think one of my spiritual teachers is known as Gordon White, passed away this May, and he said that this is kind of like figuring out that God is talking to God when you're aware of the things you do. And he's kind of tying in things about manifestation, a la Neville Goddard. And it makes a lot of sense when if you actually read those techniques and you don't hear the word manifestation and think immediately, oh, this is a bunch of bullshit. Because I think a lot of it kind of is, but it's more of like a lazy almost like anxious prayer that's destined to fail. But I think if you do them correctly and you maintain kind of the mindset and the spiritual foundation that are kind of mentioned by Neville Goddard and eventually Gordon White, then you will see that it does work. But what it's doing is it's changing you at the same time. It's turning you into something new, something that's more like spiritually robust. But yeah, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling kind of like at the depths of anguish, do those things. Use a breathing technique, find a prayer, look for things to be grateful for.